Hi, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of the ITA College Tennis Coaches Podcast. I'm your host, ITA COO Dave Mullins. Congrats to all of you wrapping up your regular season play, and good luck to those coaches and teams who are participating in postseason activities here in the coming weeks. Today, my guest is Josh Molino, the head men's tennis coach at Kansas Wesleyan. He has spent the last 5 seasons laying the foundations for long-term success in the classroom, on the courts, and in the Salina community. In this podcast, we discuss the impact Josh's exposure to some of the best coaches and players in the world at a very early age had on his path to becoming a coach, why coaches should find time to volunteer their expertise, some fundraising strategies, plus a whole lot more. Josh Molino, welcome to the ITA College Tennis Coaches Podcast.
Thanks, Dave, for having me.
Yeah, it's we've got to know each other a little bit over the last year or so. You're in our mentorship program, you're on our operating committee, and loved spending some time with you out there in Overland Park a few weeks ago for the NAIA indoors, the first one ever, and we'll get into that later in this podcast. But have a number of questions here. Learned a little bit more about your background when I was out there, and I want to share more with the coaches because I think you have a very interesting story, and I think we can all learn a lot from you today. So one of the things I learned about you when I was out there was that your father was a top coach to some of the best players in the world for a number of years. And can you talk about kind of what influence that had on you, some things you've learned, how you've started applying some of those lessons, what advice you've taken from him through the years that you apply to your program today?
Yeah, Dave. Well, thanks for having me. We started indoor season with a bang, definitely. So great event. Really proud of all the teams that came to compete, and the facility and the ITA committee. Lucy and Zach and yourself being there were awesome. My father Armand, he was a really good player. I want to say, I don't want to say great because we take that into certain standards, but played at Wake Forest. Was one of the original guys down in Bradenton at Nick Bollettieri, and so had a wealth of experience, and he had the opportunity to work with some of the top players in the world at the time, at the academy, and then developed a relationship with Aaron Crickstein and Jimmy Arias, and then while up in Michigan, coached Amy Frazier. So some great players on the professional tour, and I guess that was kind of built in the pedigree for me. Hearing about those stories, being lucky enough to have a mentor who not was just your father, but also, one of the most impactful coaches in the game for a period of time. He also spent some time with the USTA coaching the national team. So it's not just my father. My mother, Susie, she's been in the game for a long time. She's done really well with her experience at the country club level, and now has her own tennis program down in the Florida Keys. So, it's been kind of, I got lucky. It was built into the game plan. I actually did not play in college, so I went the route of the athletics department, and thinking I was going to do a 9 to 5, and just felt myself back into the coaching game and the love for the sport.
And do you regret not playing college tennis?
There's times that I do, definitely. I think that the skills that you can learn from teamwork and time management and that competition factor, would have been excellent for me to try and go on and do. I played juniors in Florida, a very competitive South Florida circuit, in high school. So I really enjoyed the team aspect. And when I got back into coaching, I felt like a part of me was alive again, as far as the tennis goes. So, so many great lessons learned from my parents and the great coaches that I had down in South Florida. Bill Clark, out of Cooper City, and Pierre Arnold out of Pembroke Pines for a little bit. Then a guy, Steve Shine, out of Weston. So those guys have developed world-class players for college and professional tennis.
And so at a young age, were you around observing what your parents were doing, or were you kind of playing yourself? Or what was your exposure to it, and what were some of those things that you were picking up? Is it, their body language? Is it when they speak, when they don't speak? What are some of those things that I guess maybe inspired you to now go into this profession?
Yeah. So my father, when he worked with Aaron and Jimmy, was a little bit before I was born. So maybe, I had some of that DNA given to me, but I didn't see too much of that. My family, they did separate, early on. So, there was a distance factor, but still always being engaged. I got to see my father when he was with the national team, and actually, the most important thing was after college. I graduated from UCF, now in the Big 12, so super pumped about that. But I moved to Michigan and I started coaching and working under him. And another really great player and coach, Ed Nagel, played at Michigan, and was the coach at Cornucova for a while. So really got to work with those guys and watch and learn how they handled situations and training and private lessons and how to be on the road and those things. So at a smaller level in the Midwest section, but still doing the same stuff that they learned over time. My father at Bolletary, and Ed with his great background. So just really, I think it was a blank canvas and picking up great things from all these other coaches around the country.
Yeah, what an education. And so you spent most of your career in the private sector of tennis. So why you didn't, like you said, you didn't play college tennis? Why bother making the move to the college tennis game?
I love the private sector. It's a lot of on-court hours. I give respect to everybody that continues to do it for 20, 30, 40 years. And we developed in Southeast Michigan from 2011 to 2016 is when I was up there. We developed an unbelievable group of young athletes, top national players, went on to play at big time Division I schools, Division III schools. And so I really just kind of felt like the motivation factor and the travel and the competition, that'd be a great sector for me to try. In fact, I had tried almost all of the industry areas: country club, private, corporate, and they're all great. Every sector has its benefits and it has its negatives, and so you try to build yourself up to take everything positive from it, and then put that in your own spin and your own identity. And so I felt like I had learned enough throughout the time, whether it was social networking or how to teach a ladies clinic, how to connect with a recreational player versus, a guy who's a UTR 13 and a half, or world tennis number, however we want to look at it. Those are the types of things that you build over time, how to manage a program, how to travel on the road. What does a player need, or what should a player have before a match, after a match, in a practice? So it was just a collection of ideas and experience, failures and success, and so I found myself finally looking at the college game.
Mm. And Josh, I'm always fascinated speaking with coaches who've come to it a little later, because I'm a huge believer on gathering, those experiences in your 20s. Maybe it's in other industries, maybe it's in other segments of the tennis industry, because the pathway now is a lot of student athletes graduate and become volunteers, and then they're right into it. And that's I don't want to say it's the only world they know, but I guess there's pros and cons to both of it, and I'm interested in what you think those pros and cons are to coming to the career as being a college coach later in your career.
Yeah, so I was a little bit later. Graduated college at 23. I took a semester off actually when I was teaching and coaching, and wasn't really sure if do I need to go to college, and most of the people surrounding me said, hey, go and finish, and then once you get out, you can really focus on the traveling and the teaching, full time. And so like I said before, you develop so many different skills on on how to handle relationships and how to be professional. Where those guys, or even the women that come out of college, they're usually primed up and ready, but there's a lot that you still have to learn, about, what to say and what not to say, and how to reach, certain individuals. You're so close in age once you've graduated. So I
Mm.
wouldn't take anything back. I do think there is, a route where you've just finished playing Division 1 and you get right into Division 1 coaching. And it's a little bit harder, I think, once you're out for a long time, to break into it. But it doesn't mean that it's easier or harder or better. Everybody's a little bit different. For me, I've managed a men's and a women's program. I've trained and player developed, with, UTRs or world tennis numbers from 13 and a half, 14, all the way down to 5, in my program. And so, sometimes those lessons are actually the best, is with somebody who's willing to learn and listening to understand. So you've got to communicate and do things a little bit differently as you mature. And so I think some of those lessons in the country club setting or the corporate setting have helped transition to my relationships with my players.
Mm. And would you have any advice, Josh, if there is a coach, young coach who's listening to this and got straight into the college game, what are some ways in which they can maybe broaden their scope, their obviously they're lacking some experience, but are there other things they could do in the tennis industry? Are there other things they could do on their campus, even, educationally, why maybe doing a master's? I'm trying to think of ideas. I don't know what they are. It could be starting their own business or camp business or doing lessons. I mean, are there other things that they can be doing that can in turn then influence their job, make them better as a college coach?
One thing that I really learned, was, you don't know everything, and you want to think that you did because you were a great player, or you were on a certain program. And I think you've got to look back and say, how did I get there? You must have great coaches along the way. You must have had a great support system to get there. And I think, being receptive to, helping yourself get better, getting certified. I think that's a big one. I fought it for a long time to get USPTA and USTA certified. And I actually did the program, the USTA High Performance, and it was excellent. I mean, it was so great. Spent a week down in Lake Nona. The USTA player development team was so receptive. And so, I think those things, when you want professional standards, and just try to continue to get better. And your way might not always be the best. It might have worked for you. It might have worked for people in your program, but it doesn't work for everybody. And each generation changes, pretty drastically. And so when I started coaching in 11 to where, I'm recruiting the guys now, it's significantly different. They're looking for different things. They want to be treated differently, and that's okay. You just have to be receptive, and you've got to adapt, right? If you don't adapt, you die, right? And so, I think that finding consistent ways to develop professionally will be really important.
Yeah. And if we don't, we're going to be replaced by the robots and chat, etc.
Please,
So
no, not yet.
we gotta we gotta keep getting better.
Right.
And Josh, did you find any aspects of the transition from the private corporate side of things into the college, nonprofit side of things? I mean, that's a big adjustment. Did you struggle with any of those?
In the beginning, where we are, we're NAIA, and obviously everybody's gonna have dreams and goals. Eventually, I'd really like to get, to the Division 1 level at some point, into a Power 5. I think you've got to have goals, you got to have dreams. How do you get there? There's no clear path. Everybody's going to be different. But here is recruiting. We do a lot of, our eligibility. We do our fundraising. I do study hall. So there was a lot of changes in what type of athlete I wanted versus what type of athlete I could recruit, and so going from a program to where we had guys like, Jack Murray, who played at North Carolina, and Max Fligner at Dartmouth, and now Andrew Zhang at Duke, that's all I kind of knew at the time. And Annika, at North Carolina, there's so many, I could go on, the list down. And so I'm used to that level. And now coming to Kansas Wesleyan, and we're recruiting more of a student athlete, right? And somebody who wants to continue playing sport, that was definitely a challenge, and there are no free rides here. You're paying to go to school. And so what do we offer at Wesleyan? What does this university offer? And I think that was definitely the hardest part. The tennis was probably the easiest part.
Yeah. Yeah. No, makes sense. And just, did you feel like you had a good sense of what you were getting into when you accepted the job? Just like you said, even you're running study hall. Were all these things explained to you before you accepted the job, or was you got in there?
No,
Oh,
it was kind of hey man, we think you're going to do a really great job. You've got a couple years to get this thing going. I can't forget Benji Jacobson at Tulane. Benji will be really upset. That's my dog. That's my boy. But guys like that, that we're used to playing at a high level and traveling, and now I'm recruiting American kids out of the Missouri Valley, out of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Texas is not really Mo Valley, but for us, it's kind of that I-35 corridor. So, it was just what program are we going to be? How do I establish a culture? And we want to be competitive. Nobody goes out to lose. You just don't do that. So we want to compete. We want to give ourselves a chance to win, but we also have standards, and every program across the country. I'm sure the Power Fives and the Ivies are super selective of what they're doing, the caliber and the student. So kind of had the same mindset. Who are we? What is our brand going to look like? What can we do? How can I separate myself from, a program that has 7 to 10 conference championships? We have 0. We've got a banner hanging in our gym that says 1949. I can't even find records on it. So, can I get someone to come in here and really buy into the program and be complete? And then can we get the results on the court?
yeah. And one of the things that you've infused within your culture is just the act of volunteering, and you volunteered a huge amount of time around our recent NAIA indoor championships. You serve on committees. You've found ways to give back to the sport of tennis, and then you've encouraged the same mindset in your players. Where does that come from? Why is that important to you?
Yeah, so some of our core values for the NAIA, one of them is servant leadership. And that's one that's really taken to me because, you know, I couldn't get to where I am now without so much help, whether it was parents or family or coaches. I was kind of one of those kids who was a club rat. Like, at one point it was my mom and my brother and I, and wasn't a lot of private lessons. And it was like, hey, go out and play those adults, go and play. And a lot of those coaches saw that, and I can't thank them enough for helping me at the time, doing that. So for the team and the guys that I have, they're so lucky. They're at a private university. They get to continue playing college tennis. We've got beautiful facilities. The university backs us up. So we've got to be able to give back. We have to understand that you don't get where you are without a team of people. And some people, you don't even realize how much they had helped you. And so I don't really require much, but I want them to be complete when they leave Kansas Wesleyan, whatever program I'm at. We have to understand that there's so much more in the small time we get together. What can we do? What's our impact? You never know what a comment or 2 hours at an elementary school or 3 hours at a nursing home will do to somebody's week or month or year. And so the guys have been great. We won a community service award a few years ago. We've done the regional community service award probably 3 or 4 years now, and so that's just big. And my grandmother, Grammy Claire, she was big on that and respect, and so just taking a lot of I was so lucky to grow up in the household that I have, with my mother Susie, my stepfather Joe, and my father Armand. And so now it's time to really put some of that stuff back to use, and the guys have really rallied around.
Yeah, very cool. You fired me up. I'm gonna go out and do some volunteering this weekend. You got me going.
Next year, Dave, next year.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, going back to the NAIA Indoor National Championship. So this was the first year, as I mentioned earlier, something we've been talking about for several years. We've had at Division 1 and Division 3 our indoor championships for decades now. Division 2 commenced in 2019, I believe, 2020. And NAIA were next on the list. And you put your hand up to be the host. We had 2 bids come in. You're one of them. Why bother? Like, you've got all these things going on as a college coach. I think you do some coaching on the side as well at a local club. Why go to the trouble of doing everything that you had to do to make this event a success?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. And looking back on it, what was I thinking? But when I first got into coaching here in the KCAC, the NAIA, I had a few guys that were really receptive to me. And I think that was important. Justin Stuckey, he's now at St. Louis, and Jason Spiegel, he's at Lubbock Christian. And those guys really helped me get involved in the committees and kind of giving back and building your network. And once I expanded the network, I got involved with the NAIA and then the national championships in Mobile. And I just felt like making the sport better was one of the number one reasons I got, sorry, one of the number one reasons I got into coaching, and so how can we make the experience better for the student athletes? How can we make tennis as a whole and the NAIA better? And then opening those doors, I got to meet Chase, at Gwinnett, and Dan at Kaiser, and Alan at Xavier, and Tom Bates at Middle Georgia State, like some of these great coaches that have been there a long time. And so the indoors was actually an idea put together, 3-4 years ago. And then obviously COVID hit, it stops the world. And we revisited again. And with a couple of years of planning, we felt like a great event for the NAIA. Why are we different? We've got some of the same caliber players. You were there, you saw an elite level. I'd love to see some crossover at some point between the top NAIA schools and the top NCAA schools, just to see what it looks like. Different story. Maybe that comes down the line. But why can't we have it? Why can't our student athletes have that same experience? And then with the great leadership of the ITA, we felt like this was going to be a success. And honestly, it was a hit. We opened indoor season, with a massive win for Kaiser on both sides. And so we feel like we're moving in the right direction, and without an event like that, Gwinnett might still have 173 on the board and more. And these student athletes will go back, and that's a lifetime experience.
Yeah, no, it was a great event, and thank you. And I think for us, we know, I as a coach, I mean, obviously I hosted regionals and I hosted tournaments and things like that. And I think sometimes if you haven't done those things, you don't fully appreciate everything that goes into making it happen. I mean, I think before this call, you were saying there was, it was 10-month prep time. This isn't something you just whip together, 48 hours before everybody got there.
Yeah.
And so, firstly, thank you on behalf of the ITA. Thank you for all your efforts and the amount of hours yourself and Liz, your girlfriend, put in leading up to the event. Those days are really long days. I don't think a lot of coaches fully appreciate. We've got D3 men's indoors this weekend. We've got D2 women's indoors. Our staff are working, 18-hour days, 3 or 4 days in a row, week after week during our indoor series. So thank you for giving up all that time. But I know one of the things and one of the challenges are costs. We deal with it here at the ITA as well. It's where do we find the money to make all these things happen, be able to offer these type of programming, these events. But you came up with some creative ways to raise the money to put on a great event. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, I don't want to share too many of my secrets, because eventually they're going to be confidential in a room. But no, you're exactly right. We had to really be creative and find ways to raise money for an event like this. Don't get me wrong, Kansas Wesleyan, big supporters of what we're doing here as far as the tennis program and our student athletes and the experience. Because that's what they're going to take when they graduate and they're alums. 20 years from now, I look back and man, we played in the national indoors or we hosted the ITA regional. But we did a few things like hometown sponsors, actually something I borrowed from my baseball coach, Bill Neal, a great guy. I think he borrowed it along the lines, way back when. But so it's a fee where it's a tax deductible donation, and we put your logo or your business card or your website on our roster page. So it's kind of like, hey, I'm supporting Dave Mullins with my automotive shop. And so it's a really cool opportunity for people to donate. They're actually getting something in return, and they're supporting the university. So the other thing that we've done is a hometown sponsored doubles tournament. So we get the community involved. Just depends on what facility. We've got a brand new 12-court facility that we're doing. And so each community member will donate to the program to play in the event. It could be $10, it could be 50, it could be 100, whatever you feel like you can do and help the program. And then we'll have a night where we provide food and drinks, and music, and we'll just do a big mixer, and do we'll end up with a champion. Usually the champion ends up pretty late, but you might say, hey, I'd like to do $200, and I'd like to support Bryce Ware, our number one guy. And so just a couple ideas like that, and over time we've built up enough momentum that it's really helped our program. And so some of those events like that, I'll leave you with two. It's really helped us, and for a small program like Wesleyan here, everything helps. We raised almost $25,000 this year to have this event, and to pay for indoor court time, to pay for our outdoor court time, for travel and all those extra things that we provide.
Yeah. And with the roster advertisement, how long a period do they get to keep those details up? If it's Dave Mullins' profile, is it just during the event, or
we can make you one, so you can have unlimited time. But it's usually a year. So each year we'll go back and we've got a form, and it's not, hey, I'm asking you or I'm begging you for money. It's hey, Dave Mullins, and I'm studying pre-med, and this really helps me with my experience. It's not going into coach's pocket. It's not going to the university. It's going, everything goes back to the student. And so it's a very cool little concept. I think people are very receptive to it. I can't imagine what it would look like at a Power 5 level, or D2 or D3. Your alumni bases are probably bigger and stronger, but it's something that we've created here that has really worked so far.
Yeah, no, what a great idea. So how might you then encourage coaches? We talked about the volunteering side of it, committees, hosting these events, the fundraising. How would you encourage coaches to think beyond just their win and loss record? I know this time of year it's really hard because you're in the thick of it. It's dual match season. You want to get as many wins on the board as you can, but how can we get more coaches involved in giving their time back to the sport that, as you said earlier, has given them so much, right? They didn't just land here. They've had all these experiences, all these people in their life, people sacrificing things on their behalf so they could be in this position today. And how do we get more coaches thinking that way and putting their hands up to do things that might be a little bit uncomfortable, that might be difficult, that might be challenging, but will be very much worth it? I don't think you have any regrets with all the work you did to make that event possible.
Yeah.
I think you have nothing but pride and happiness for what you created for everybody there.
Yeah, I think everybody's going to be different. I can't imagine what the great Ty Tucker does at Ohio State. Or I've developed a relationship with Trip Phillips at North Carolina, and Coach Sam Paul, and those are legends in there. So I think their mindset's going to be a little bit different. The wins and the losses. For me, it was more like, how do I build a culture? How do I build a program where these guys go back and 20 years from now want to support Kansas Wesleyan or the program that I'm at? And so for us, my success revolves around having a full, healthy team, graduating, GPA, and what are we giving back? Now I think at some programs, at some levels, I think the wins and the losses is very big. But something I learned from the mentor program, one of the things, I got lucky enough. Thank you for pairing me with the great coach Peter Wright. He's been just outstanding for me, and our relationship's awesome. And I always ask him, I said, Coach, how did you do it at Cal for so long and so well. And he said the first thing was culture, and building the right culture and getting guys to come in and believe there's more than just the tennis, and the results will follow. And so, for me, that's kind of where I'm at with Kansas Wesleyan. I think every program is going to be a little bit different, but I will say the common denominator has to be the culture. And what are you guys doing? Are whether it's ladies or men, are they supporting each other? Are they hanging out together? Are they studying together? Is it this constant, I come in and I'm looking over my shoulder to transfer, or is it like, I love this place, I want to be here, I want to be an alum? And so it took time. It took 4 years to finally get a class where we go to practice and they can't wait to get to practice. For me, everybody's a little bit different. It might be easier for some coaches than others, but I think that's what the number one thing that I've done here, and I've been very proud of. And I think the university has seen that and are allowing us to do a national indoors, are allowing us to host the ITA regional. Our partnerships in the community are great. So again, I can't really speak for everybody else on the wins and the losses, but I think if you start from the inside out and you have good people, good things come.
Yeah, great advice. All right, well, we'll get into our standard rapid fire questions. What is the best piece of advice you've received from anyone in life?
Hold on, let me look at the questions.
Doesn't have to be tennis related.
Yeah. The best
You
piece
gave
of
some advice
advice.
from Peter Wright, so you can't repeat that.
Yeah. So wait, I want to shout out to Grant Chen too. He's been super receptive. He helped me with indoors. I had some questions on, hey, we're tight on the funds. What can we do? Extra for the student athlete experience. And he was nailing it. And then of course, the very next week he puts on the Dallas Open, and it's like it's going to be the 5th Grand Slam now or something. So
Probably.
really pumped to have relationships with Coach Wright and Grant, Coach Chen at SMU. But best piece of advice, good Lord, I'm getting text. If you want to make everybody happy, sell ice cream. Nick Saban.
That's great. Love it. All right. Is there a book, podcast, article, passage, poem that's influenced your professional career in any way?
I've been big on YouTube lately, and I can read. Okay, no, I really can. But I'm better watching film and watching video. And so I watch a lot of background stories on. It's really been Nick Saban a lot and Bill Belichick. I know they're football coaches, but they're just great minds. And the way that they've built programs and where they've come from. Coach Belichick was a son of a coach, and Coach Saban was the son of a gas station owner. And it's like, it's so many different ways to get to the top, and both of them are at the top of their games, and their programs are just powerhouses, and they're successful, and they do it the right way. So honestly, really that I couldn't pinpoint an exact book, but just a lot of YouTube films and bios.
Okay. Was Belichick a great coach, or was it just Brady?
Come on. It's Belichick.
All right. Do you have a favorite drill you like to do at your team?
Gosh, there's so many. We have a drill that I stole from Ed Nagel. I don't know where Ed Nagel was one of the top players at Michigan, Big Ten history. And when I got to Michigan, he always did this game called 3v3. It's pretty simple. It's 3 on one side, 3 on the other. It's an approach shot game down the line, and you can play it cross court. It's 1 point, get out of the way, and it's super fast. The guys are pumped. It's loud, a lot of tight points, a lot of hooking. So it's a very fun, fast game for us.
I know you're joking about the hooking.
I wish I was. Yeah.
And what is one lesson you hope your student athletes have learned by the time they have graduated?
Just to appreciate people, because we just, you don't know how long you're going to have, or with who, or who you meet, or whose day you're going to impact, and appreciate what you have. And I think if you go to practice and you go to class and you enjoy it, it starts to translate to your family life, to your coworkers, to your staff. And hopefully that can, be with people for a long time.
All right, you were off the hot seat, Josh. Great job. That was awesome. Learned a lot. I'm excited to follow your career, and thanks for all you've done for the ITA and college tennis to date. I know you'll be given lots more for the decades to come. So well done, and keep it up, and good luck with the rest of the season.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for your time.
Coaches, just a quick reminder that our ITA College Tennis Coaches Convention will be held during the NCAA Combined Championships from May 17th to the 20th in Lake Nona, Florida. If you would like to learn more or register, please visit convention.itatennis.com. I hope to see many of you there.